guys, welcome back to Spelling and Word Study. My name is Mrs. Rhoades and I'm here to get you started on Unit 19, the ENT and ANCE endings. Please take a second to gather your materials. You will need your purple book open to page 119. You'll also need some colorful pens, markers, or crayons. Remember, whatever I mark on my board, you should be marking on your page. If at any point I'm moving too fast, please pause the video and catch up. All right, so last week we talked about two derivational suffixes, ANT and ANCE. We found that it is often possible to change a word that ends with ANT to ANCE. So for instance, we can change distant to distance and instant to instance, okay? This week, we're going to see something similar happen with the suffixes ENT and ENCE. So, let's start by reading our list. As we do, I want you to listen for that ENCE or ENT ending in each word. You'll notice I went ahead and broke all the words into syllables and put a green check mark above the stressed syllable. So if you'd like to do the same, you could pause the video right now. All right, so let's begin. Please repeat after me. Absence, apparent, conference, confidence, consistent, dependent, evidence, frequent, inference, influence, innocent, opponent, president, reference, represent, resident, sequence, silence, transparent, and violence. All right, so what I would like to do first is let's choose a color. And what I want to do is I want to mark off all the words that end with ENCE that are used here as nouns, but can also be used as adjectives with a little bit of tweaking. So what I mean is if we take the word absence, we know that that's a noun, right? Like the school secretary marked my absence, or she keeps track of my absences. But I can turn that into an adjective by changing ENCE back to ENT. So when I am absent, she marks my absence. Notice I went from adjective to noun. I can do the same thing here with confidence, right? Confidence is a feeling word. I am filled with confidence. It means I know I can do a good job. When I have confidence, I am feeling confident. Again, the ENT adjective changes to ENCE and makes it a noun. If I am, no, I want to skip that one. Oh, evidence. All right, let's look at evidence. Evidence is a noun, right? The lawyers or the detectives, they have to collect evidence and they bring it to the jury, right? And if they bring the right evidence, then it becomes evident or obvious to the jury that a person is guilty or innocent. So again, evident, the adjective, becomes evidence, the noun. Where else? I know I had, oh, right here. Silence. There's my ENCE ending. That is a noun, right? Silence is a state of quiet. Nobody's talking. I can take silence and change it to silent. ENT becomes ENCE and vice versa. And then last but not least, let's look at the word violence. That's also a noun, right? I don't let my children watch certain TV shows or movies because there is too much violence. I don't like to see people hurting each other and fighting. So there's my ENCE ending. When there's a lot of violence, that means you see violent behaviors. Okay, so I think I caught all of them. So blue box equals ENCE. And what we have here is we have an adjective that changes to a noun. Absent becomes absence, confident becomes confidence, evident becomes evidence, silent becomes silence, and violent becomes violence. Okay, every once in a while, we can take a verb and change it to a noun as well. So let's look at the word conference. That also ends with ENCE. Well, a conference is a meeting, right? Like a parent-teacher conference. And what happens at that meeting? Well, your teachers and your parents confer. They sit down and discuss things, right? So confer is a verb. It becomes conference, which is a noun. Let's look at inference, okay? We make inferences all the time. Our friend comes in and she's crying and she's got a bloody knee. We can make an inference. Ooh, I bet she just fell and scraped up her knee, right? That is our inference. We infer when we put details together, okay? So we start with infer and we add that ENCE ending to make it a noun. Let's look at reference. Here's another noun, okay? A reference is something you can go to for information. Like if you're trying to figure out where something is in the world, you might use an atlas or a map as a reference. If you're trying to figure out how to spell a word, you might use a dictionary as your reference. So a reference is a tool that gives you information. You can refer to it. So you refer to a reference, you confer at a conference, and you infer when you make an inference. Down here, purple box also has an ENCE ending, but this time we started with a verb and changed it to a noun, okay? And then we have words like influence. The verb form for influence is influence. So you can be a good influence on your little brother or sister by setting a good example, but you can also influence them, which means they're going to copy what you do, or they're going to think the way you think if you influence them. So notice influence and influence, two different parts of speech. We see that again with the word sequence. A sequence is a like a set of numbers or a set of events, right? So 2, 4, 6, 8 is a sequence of even numbers, okay? But you can also use sequence as a verb. If you put things in order, you're telling what happened in a story by sequencing the events, by putting them in order. So I'm going to write that sequence equals put in order, or it can mean an order. Down here, red box equals ENCE, but this represents words that can be a noun and a verb. Nothing's changing. We're not changing any endings, adding endings. That same word can be used as a noun or a verb, and it's pronounced exactly the same way. All right, so now let's move on to our other suffix this week, and that is the ENT suffix. And so we see that in words like consistent. If somebody's consistent, they do the same thing over and over again. So maybe my friend is always late, which is kind of annoying. but she always shows up 10 minutes late. So, hey, at least she's consistent. I can expect her to do the same thing over and over again. Okay? The noun form of this is consistency. Kind of like ENCE, but there's a Y at the end, right? So she is late with consistency, right? Over and over again. Consistency, by the way, can also refer to like if you're mixing something, you want to get the right consistency, not too thick, not too wet or watery. Okay, so consistent and consistency. This right here is an adjective. Okay, let's look at dependent. If a person is dependent on you, they need you. So that's an adjective, right? All babies are dependent on their parents. They don't know how to survive on their own, right? So we need to think about their dependence, right? What do they need from us? Notice ENCE becomes ENT. It's the opposite of what we saw earlier. So we see that with dependence and dependent. Let's look at frequent. Here's our ENT ending, right? If something happens, if you are a frequent shopper at the mall, it means you go there often. So frequent means often. And the noun form of that is frequency. So I stop at the mall with frequency, like pretty often. Again, just like consistent becomes consistency, frequent becomes frequency. All right, let's look at innocent. There's an ENT ending. Innocent is an adjective, right? If someone is innocent, they didn't do it. They didn't commit the crime, right? We are confident about their innocence, okay? We're going to skip that one for a second. I'm looking for more adjectives. Oh, right here. Transparent. If something is transparent, it's see-through, like a window is transparent, right? So that's an adjective. The noun form, transparency. So this is interesting, right? All the words we just talked about, all those green box words, end with ENT, and they're all adjectives, but they could have started as nouns and then changed to adjectives, either by getting rid of the ENCY ending or the ENCE ending. Okay, then we have some words here that are just used as nouns. So for instance, if we look at the word opponent, even though so far all of our ENT words have been adjectives, here's an example of a noun. So an opponent is a person we play against in a sport, right? My opponent is on the red team. So that's a noun. A president is a person who runs a company, the president of a company or the president of a country. That's also a noun, even though it ends with ENT. And then resident is also a noun. A person who lives in a particular place. Maybe you're a resident of New York City, or maybe you're a resident of Waco, Texas, right? It just means that that's where you live. So in all of these cases, we have an ENT ending that doesn't represent an adjective. It's just a good old-fashioned noun, okay? A couple other little things we have. Apparent. Apparent is an adjective, but there's no noun form. There's no like appearance or apparency. It's just apparent. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Perhaps there was a noun form that fell out of fashion at some point. I don't really know. But in this case, it's just an adjective. It's not a noun that turned into an adjective. And then one last word on the list, and maybe I shouldn't have even put it on here, but represent doesn't really fit here, but it is a verb, okay? Isn't pronounced like the other ENT words because it's a stressed ending, so we actually hear that sound. But if you represent someone, like a lawyer might represent you, or this symbol represents the letter A, this symbol right here represents the schwa. Just know it's a verb. Okay, so we've talked about the meanings of our words, their parts of speech, the rules for changing them from one part of speech to another. So that leaves us one last thing to talk about. When you get to page 123, you are going to learn another Latin root. And that root is F-E-R. Whenever you see words that contain F-E-R, there's a good chance that they have something to do with carrying or bringing stuff. So think about a ferry boat. What's the job of a ferry? It brings people from one port to another. So if you live on a tiny island and you're trying to get back to the mainland, you probably have to take a ferry, okay? We're going to have other words here like fertile. If soil is fertile, if it's fertile soil, it can support or carry healthy crops. If you transfer something, you carry it from one place to another, or you bring it from one place to another. So maybe you switch colleges, you transfer from this college to the next college. You're going to transfer yourself and all of your learning, all the classes you've taken from one to the next. But in our list this week, we have three words that contain that root. So check it out. In conference, when you have a conference, when you confer with someone, what are you doing? You're sharing information with them. The teacher's telling them, this is how your child's doing in class. This is what he's doing well. This is what she should work on. They're bringing you important information, okay? Inference. When you make an inference, you go deep. You look for clues that carry meaning, right? So when you make an inference, when you infer, you're trying to bring out the important information in an event or in a book or whatever. And then the last one is reference. So when you refer to something, you're going back to it so you can carry back information. So if you refer to the map, you're going to bring back what you learned about something's location. When you refer to the dictionary, you're going to bring back what you learned about a word's meaning. Okay? So, brown circle equals root. And the root we're working on is fer, F-E-R. And anytime we see that, it has something to do with carrying or bringing, right? Even the word, by the way, if you think of the word different, if two people differ, they carry different opinions, right? Or they bring different skills or appearances to the situation. So differ, different, difference, they fit our pattern. I probably should have put them on this list, but you'll see them talked about here as well. All right, lots of great vocab this week. Good luck, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.